Hello everyone, welcome back to the video. So today we're going to be looking at separating mixtures, specifically how do we separate mixtures and apply these methods to real world uses. Now, what I'm going to be showing you, so some of my classes today did a student-centered lesson, specifically 3 of my 4. This is the lesson that would go along with that student-centered lesson. This is the material that you would have missed if you didn't copy anything or you missed the material. So this is what would go with it. Excuse me, I have hiccups. You're due now. Which of the following is a mixture and why? And your homework is Matter and Energy Packet, page 1B. So, your mixture would be NaCl-AQ, because this AQ means that we are mixing our compound with water. Anytime you see an L, an S, or a G next to your compound, it means that it's a substance. So that it's just that, it's nothing else. But NaCl-AQ means that there is salt and water. So this is salt water. So there are a few different methods of separating our mixtures. The common methods we'll be going over today are distillation, filtration, evaporation, chromatography, and decanting. First, distillation. So distillation is the process of boiling a solution which results in it separating. It's separating based on boiling point, and this is specifically for 2 liquids when you want to separate 2 liquids. So there are a couple different examples. So you may have heard the term distilled water, especially for students who have been working in science. This is the process of how to make distilled water. We use distillation. This is also the process on how we can make different types of oil, from crude oil or oil found in the ground. So this is a distillation apparatus. Let me explain how it works. So first, you've got your mixture. You've got your Bunsen burner. It's heating it up, which causes part of it to evaporate. And that evaporation is going to go into this tube. Now, this particular tube is called a condenser. The reason why is because it causes this vapor to condense to a liquid. So, what is in this condenser? We have a cold water inlet, which means that we have cold water constantly flowing through this tube. And during this process, we have a water outlet where the water, once it gets a little too warm, goes out. So it can continue flowing through cold water and continue being cold enough to cause this vapor to go through condensation. And what will happen is eventually it'll go dripping down and drip down into this container that has been distilled. Now, fractional distillation. You don't necessarily need to know this for an exam, but I do want to tell you about it anyway because it has a lot of cool uses. Fractional distillation is specifically used for your crude oil. So what you would do is, as you would increase the temperature, you would evaporate more of the crude oil and then use that for different tools. So for example, we could use petrol. We could use petrol for vehicles, or petroleum for vehicles. We could use it for different chemicals. We could use it for lubricants, oils, polishes. We could even use it to pave our roads. Second type is filtration. Filtration can be used to pour mixtures through a filter. Your solids would be trapped in the filter paper while the filtrate or the liquid would come out. Basically, it separates it based on the size of your particle. So, for example, coffee. We use coffee filters. So we would put the coffee beans in the coffee filter, we would put hot water through it, and it would take out parts of the coffee that could be dissolved in the hot water. Also, you could use filtration for certain processes of making cheese. So, or even tofu. Because one of the processes of it is putting it into something called a cheesecloth, which is a fabric filter. And when you squeeze it, all of the water would come out of it. That is another method of filtration. You can even use filtration in something as simple as a vacuum, because a vacuum sucks out air and dirt. But what that vacuum bag is actually a filter, because it filters the dirt out, keeps the dirt in, and filters the air out. Otherwise, our vacuum would blow up like a balloon. And that's just an animation showing you what the filtration process looks like. So as you can see, the sand is going down. The sand water mixture is going down into here. It's going into our filter and it's building up. And as a result, only the liquid part is going to be dripping out into our beaker. Evaporation is our next type. So evaporation is the process of heating a solution and leaving its solid phase behind. Basically, this can be done with homogeneous mixtures, specifically ones that have been made with mixing a liquid and a solid. So, for example, evaporation can be used to clean cruise ships. So, if you've been on a Royal Caribbean cruise, or if you've heard of them, they use a process called steam evaporation. What that does is it takes ocean water, goes through the process of evaporating it, and then it puts the salt back in the ocean, and it keeps the water and allows people to shower, wash their hands, even drink the water. So evaporation has a lot of uses, especially for people on cruises, because where would the cruise store enough water? There would be no probable place. They have water rides. They have people taking showers. They have people washing their hands all the time. They need water to wash the dishes. So they would need a system to be able to get as much water as they needed without losing storage. And again, that's what this steam evaporation apparatus is for. The next type is chromatography. So chromatography separates a substance based on their solubility or their ability to dissolve in water. So some common uses for chromatography could include in forensics, you could have a ransom letter that's written. And what you could do is you could test different types of pens, including a sample from that letter, see how the water flows, and depending on how it flows is what type of pen the person used. And that could help you figure out who the culprit was. Another way the chromatography could be used is in 2013. There was actually a huge scandal in the UK because apparently there were many companies that were advertising that they were selling beef products, but in actuality they were selling horse meat. And again, chromatography was used to help us determine that, which I think is really cool. By the way, this is just an image of ink being used in chromatography. I did this a few years ago. So you can see that the ink is separating into different pigments, and that could tell us what types of pens are being used. Now, the last process is called decanting. So decanting is the process of separating two layers of a solution. So you could separate the liquid and the solid part, or if you had like an oil and water, you could do this too. Basically, you would pour one of the layers into another container. Now, there are a couple of really good examples. The easiest one I can think of off the top of my head is the process of making cheese. When you boil mozzarella in water, what happens is the cheese actually floats to the top. And so you could just pick out the cheese. That's a process that could be defined as decanting. The other process that could be defined as decanting is actually a process of receiving plasma from our blood. What we would do is we would give a sample of blood. We put it in a device called a centrifuge, which a centrifuge is basically a device that spins our test tubes at really fast rates, and the gravitational pull forces aspects of our blood to separate. And through the separation process, we are able to separate the plasma from our blood so we could use it to study our human bodies. So separating elements and compounds. By the way, more on this when we get to the redox and oxidation unit. But elements cannot be broken down. With that said, compounds can be. Specifically, compounds can be broken down through extreme processes called electrolysis. But again, more on that when we get to the redox unit. So you don't need to know what electrolysis is, but just know by chemical means we can separate a compound and elements cannot be separated at all. So what I'd like you to do now is I'd like you to go to the exit ticket. Well, actually, don't go to the exit ticket. The exit ticket was based on the PowerPoints your classmates made for that lesson. So what I'd like you to do instead, if you're watching this video because you were absent or for any reason, just message me on Remind and I will give you an alternative exit ticket for you to complete. And as always, thank you for listening. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day.